Thank you so much, Andre, for that great and good introduction. I will share with you my screen here. There we go. I hope this looks good for you. May I just ask the team if you are seeing it in full presentation mode?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So during this session now, we will be looking into how facilities, by using equipment, can support in reducing anxiety and stress for both residents and caregivers. There are some key factors for us to be aware of when working in long-term care today, and we have heard about some parts already in earlier presentations. These all have to be taken into consideration when talking about equipped facilities, and key factors in long-term care today is one thing. This may change over time, perhaps, as Famida talked about earlier, and they may not also be fixed to a specific facility as we know it. Mobility patient handling and ergonomic working conditions, they do remain important challenges for us, but now in addition, we also face the challenge of another kind, and that is working with and improving the lives of the residents living with dementia. And this combination can be a tough one sometimes. We also know that due to the high prevalence of dementia and the higher expectations of residents and their relatives, long-term care facilities are today trying to create an environment that feels familiar and home-like, and this puts specific and special demands on the design of our long-term care facilities and equipment, as we also heard about earlier today. Many facilities today also focus more and more on what goes on outside of the regular care hours. By increasing the residents' well-being also outside of these care routines, the facilities, they can improve the quality of life and save time due to having more calm, satisfied, and engaged residents. This is just as important as having good care processes in place 24 hours around the clock. We heard some great examples from Ilsa and Dr. Henny from Residencia before when they explained how important it is to have a person-centered care approach. And I don't think that there is any further explanation needed for this. We just have to remember that we need to know the person behind the person, so to speak, to be able to deliver the right restoring care, as we learned is a better word today. So by doing good interactions and asking a lot of questions, we will be able to provide that correct care. So what is important to have in mind when looking at equipment? Well, first of all, as a key part that I just mentioned, it is the importance of knowing who the resident is, who do I have in front of me, and having this person-centered approach. And this comes both from a mind perspective, but also from, of course, a physical perspective. This is one of the most important things to remember when equipping a facility, because we also heard before that one size does not fit all in these kinds of settings. Another consideration is to make sure that our caregivers or the disciplines working around a resident, they all have been provided with the right training and care skills to be able to meet the different needs of the residents. This to be able to assess and also understand the different ways of interacting, engaging, and supporting the residents, promoting mobility and quality of life. This at the same time as doing it in a safe, ergonomic way for themselves. And like I said, caregivers, that's not just a nurse. It could be the physio, it could be the OT, it's the doctor. So many people working around the residents. There are very many different interactions during the day, and there are the essential tasks, but it is the time to find those quality moments in between that are key as well. Key is to get smooth and efficient, to get as smooth and as efficient as possible with as few moments of friction during the day as possible. This is where I can see that equipment play a big role. But before we go into fully equipment, I just want to touch upon what we mean when we use the word efficiently. Some of you may have heard or may even have had first-hand experience with different kinds of efficiency models, such as Lean Six Sigma, which is an approach of reducing wasted effort and increasing quality and efficiency. Or maybe perhaps the productive ward approach, also called releasing time to care, which was launched in 2008 and developed by the UK NHS Innovation and Improvement Department. These approaches, they both promote the need to improve efficiency of work, and when related to care processes, it is with the aim to improve resident safety and at the same time staff well-being. When we say efficiency, we're referring to a number of different situations, such as the caregiver adopting sound postures and handling practices to reduce the risk of injury. And so if the staff are not injured, they will be able to remain at work, meaning no absence due to injury or pain, keeping the continuum of care and the momentum and the interaction and engagement with the resident. We also mean that we're using all the equipment resources available, making a sound assessment of the resident to enable us to choose the right equipment. It is crucial to enable the assistance to be provided in the right way, as well as promoting resident functional mobility. Crucial resources such as staff numbers, time available, or equipment availability very often seem to be a concern. And also now in the current pandemic, additional pressure may be put on organizations with staff taking on new work routines in perhaps sometimes unfamiliar surroundings. This can all add to the complexity of promoting workflow efficiencies, but I really must say the need for efficient workflows has never been as important as it is now. So with this said, I just want to make sure that we all understand efficiency is not about running faster. It is about working smarter, perhaps. So let's just have a little look at some different benefits of workflow efficiencies. Workflow efficiencies, they can be a benefit to the resident, the caregiver, as well as the facility or the organization. I think that we typically think of efficiencies in terms of time, money, and resources, and maybe predominantly being of most benefit to the facility or organization. Of course, there are benefits to them, but there are also benefits to the resident and caregiver. By promoting resident functioning, and enabling them to be more self-reliant means more dignified care for the resident. It also means that when the resident is encouraged to do more for themselves and potentially maintain mobility, well, then the caregiver only needs to provide assistance when absolutely necessary. And if the work process can enable reduced caregiver involvement, such as only handling with perhaps one single caregiver, well then in terms of the caregiver numbers or time, there is a reduced risk of exposure related to physical overload. And in today's pandemic situation, this could also mean reduced risks of cross-contamination. So let's have a look at a few examples of workflows in everyday processes. What can this look like? Well, we know that there are many studies made showing potential risks during care. And if we just, for example, have a look at working at the bedside in general, which was mentioned here earlier today as well, a recent analysis of patient handling activities and injuries by AON risk management cited that the management of dependent people within the bed is the highest cause of reported injuries to caregivers, with the highest number of total claims and the highest associated claim costs, with an average claim cost of over 24,000 US dollars for each claim. So a lot of focus needs to be put in here to make sure that we look after caregiver safety. Another example is when we look at a resident who needs moderate assistance with hygiene care. Then research show that it takes on average about 17 minutes to complete the in-bed bathing process, usually having 2 caregivers. Compare this with only 14 minutes when using a multifunctional height adjustable hygiene chair, a Corendo for instance, and 1 caregiver. So by using more appropriate equipment to enable access to shower can not only save time, but also reduce manpower required, meaning fewer caregivers. And you could, in some instances, use 1 caregiver rather than 2. And I know that perhaps a 2-3 minute saving for each hygiene event doesn't seem very much, but when you have a ward of people where a lot of them need assistance, this can very, very quickly add up to really, really make a difference. So for instance, a 30-bedded ward or unit with about a third of the people in need of assistance, say they're being washed twice a day, this could be a time saving of 60 minutes when using a Corendo, for example. If you then also count the different hygiene activities that a Corendo, in this case, could be managed with only 1 caregiver instead of 2, well, then this could result in anything up to 230 minutes time saving. That is 3 hours and 50 minutes every 24 hours. And this can really equate to having more time to care, as you understand. So by changing the workflow processes from in-bed bathing to using alternative resources, such as showering equipment, Corendo, or perhaps a shower trolley, well, then you not only reduce time, but also the potential risk of physical overload associated with resident repositioning and transfers, which we now know is the major cause of reported injuries to caregivers. As stated, there are very many different studies, all within this area of hygiene or patient handling. And at Arjo, we have gathered many of them in different clinical evidence summaries. We have one, for example, for hygiene solutions, which very nicely shows the clinical outcomes for bathing and hygiene in terms of the clinical benefits to the residents, but it also shows the time-saving efficiencies and much better ergonomic and conditions to the for the caregivers. And we did have a question today about financial outcomes, how we can show that by maybe perhaps using equipment. And this is a perfect example of how that is being done, so to speak. But like discussed earlier, and what John also just previously mentioned, it is not just about the equipment in itself. It's about knowing what equipment to use, when to use it, and how to use it. So I would say it's very, very much about skills and products in combination. What you're seeing here is a Danish study carried out in a care facility illustrating the benefits of using a Corendo, but it was not the equipment alone which made the difference. It was the equipment with a program of intervention, the training and education of the caregivers in how to choose which resident the product would assist, and also embedding it into the facility hygiene care processes that made the difference. And there were some big differences over the 16 months of this program, both related to workflow efficiency and caregiver safety. And as you can see that there was a 39% reduction of the total number of transfers, as well as 100% reduction of transfers performed by 2 caregivers. Also, the number of transfers performed in an unhealthy way for the caregivers, they were reduced by 83%. So by combining the right product with the skills to use it is key in all of this. It is very much about knowing when, where, and how to use the equipment. And some products are more relevant than others in a long-term care facility based on different needs, of course, of the residents living there. And here you see some examples of the specific Arjo dementia care portfolio with a Corendo as one example. And you're also seeing the Nordic Wellness Rocking Chair that has been mentioned many times during today. So coming close to the end of the session, I would like to emphasize a few parts. By understanding how to use the solutions in the specific care settings and regularly assessing the residents to make sure that the correct equipment promoting mobility is in place, well, then I am 100% certain that equipment can facilitate smoother activities of daily living. And you've seen some examples of it today already. Having the right equipment in place can also enable us to work with a person-centered approach. We can also have support in quality interactions between our caregivers and residents. And it is about giving us that quality time together that we may otherwise be chasing during the day because we have so many different tasks as caregivers to perform. This is when we actually can create those one-to-one interactions and getting the interaction of high level that we want. I would also say, coming back to what we've heard so much about today, again, with a person-centered care approach, not just looking at the essential routines. And I love the example that Ilse talked about earlier today about the woman that her biggest wish was to go on a helicopter ride. We need to know those things to be able to personalize the day for the resident, to see what drives them, because this is what we want with all of this. We want to deliver and have a dignified care environment, both for our residents, but of course also for the caregivers as such. So in conclusion, what does it mean to have an equipped facility? Well, for us at Arjo, it means to put the resident in the center of everything, having a person-centered care approach, to have a great quality of care and quality of life interaction every day. This as we at the same time look at increasing staff safety, manage workload, prevent injuries and sick leave. We make the best use of the capacity that we have with a single caregiver approach. But for this, we have to make sure that we not only have equipment in place, we need to have the right equipment in the right environment with people having the right care skills. And this is how we get the positive aid flowing and can further support dignified restoring care. So with this, Steve, I would like to say thank you so much for having me and inviting me, and for all of you listening. And I would like to see if there are any questions for me, perhaps.